Hi, and welcome to Business Success Podcast. Again, with me, James.
And Jonathan.
Today we're going to be talking a bit more about the HR of a company. And that's something that you've always been really focused on, isn't it? HR within a business.
People are number one in the business. You got good people, the chances are you're going to have a good team.
Yeah.
And I think in my sort of experience throughout HR, throughout my career, people are lost at a business when they're not given the right role. They don't understand what their duties are. They're not motivated. They don't know how to contribute, to the performance on the business. But most importantly is because they're not getting the level of communication from the business owners as to actually how the business is operating and how they play a part in the performance of the business.
I mean, I remember one thing that was stuck to me was that you said that, a business owner should always give the vision of the business to its employees. Say, look, this is where I want us to go, because then everyone can go, okay, now I know where we're going. If the business owner keeps everything secret, everyone starts second guessing, is that the right decision to make? Why did he choose that? That's right, isn't it?
Well, people start feeling vulnerable, because if you don't know what your role is in the business and how you're contributing to the business success, you tend to think, in actual fact, you may be redundant to it, and you may be worried about your career.
Yeah.
And engaging the people in your business is really the number one priority. And the thing is, by doing that and really understanding how your people operate, and I felt a little bit coming out of furlough that a lot of business owners that I come across have not actually firmed down on the job roles of their employees, for the simple reason that that they're worried about losing them, because the market is so volatile since we come out of Brexit. They fear that if we lose, what we've already got, how are we going to replace it? And they're thinking about how to get through the next day or the next month and so forth. They're not looking or planning for the long-term future. And so people planning and people management is so very
Important.
keen to a business success.
Yeah.
And the one thing is that by doing that, believe it or not, you can control your costs a lot of the time.
What, just by managing your people correctly?
Yeah, because in actual fact, if you can imagine, if you've not actually been told roughly what to do, what could take an hour, you could expand that to 4 hours, couldn't you?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
With a bit of chit chat and a coffee stop and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You could easily expand it. Yeah, you could expand it. So that, at the end of the day, if you haven't got KPIs for people and you haven't got any direction and they don't know what success looks like, the chances are what should take normally 1 hour could quite be expanded into a morning's work, which means that becomes very, very expensive for the business, and what we've seen is more and more people are disengaged when they come into work because they haven't got the direction and they haven't got the motivation and they don't know actually what part they play. But
so
also,
having like a key outline for your employees is almost like sort of track lines of where they can go then, isn't it? And then it's like all of a sudden their efficiency is sort of straight at, like an arrow.
People should know when they walk in to work
what they're doing
straight away.
Yeah, okay.
Not spend the first hour talking to the mates and having a coffee and just fumbling around and I better do some work now.
Yeah.
They need to be targeted to doing the job immediately as they come in. And those who are perform that much better. But also what's really important is you're always going to have a level. It doesn't matter what business you're in. I certainly saw it in my own business when I took over the family farm for 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
That there's this word called shrinkage, all right, where stuff seems to go outside the back door, all right, without the owner knowing. And it's happened in every business, I've taken over, where in actual fact there's been leakage. And if you can stop that leakage, you're going to improve the profitability of the business. So a good example, I've done a lot of management in wholesaling. And obviously in the electrical wholesaling market, a lot of stuff is quite desirable, whether it's batteries, especially come Christmas, they tend
Yeah.
to go really
Everyone's got a
quickly.
TV remote, so
Yeah, yeah, batteries go really quick. It could be, light fittings, light
yeah.
bulbs. It could be cable. It could be, if you're selling white goods, it could be a radio, a washing machine, dishwasher, or whatever. But if you're not got control of your stock and the process and the procedures of where that stock comes in and where it goes out, what you find is people will take advantage.
Sure.
And it only takes one or two people to do that, and that has an impact on your profitability. So, for instance, if you were making 10% net profit,
Okay.
and let's say someone took £100,
Yep.
quite easy. It's not a lot
No,
of
yeah.
product. £100, you've actually got to make another £1,000 sale to replace that £100 lost. So if you start multiplying that to maybe someone takes £1,000, you can imagine it just goes higher and higher and higher. The extra sales you've got to do to replace that profit that you've lost. So in all my businesses and so forth, I've been very, very keen on actually putting the operations in to stop that. And sometimes the way to see leakage in a business is seeing if something changes. So you put a process in place and then somehow it changes. You know what I mean? You need to investigate, why did that change? Why has someone changed that process?
Well, like, what do you mean by process though? So, like, what are you? It's not big changes you're making, is it? Just to see if there's a leakage around, is there?
A really good example on the farm, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
I had a guy who worked for me, and he was absolutely amazing. Really liked him. He always came in at the right time, always left at the right time, and he completed the job at the right time. And he always parked his car in front of the dairy. And then, for some reason, 4 or 5 years later, he started parking it by the silage pit. And he always had his dog in there, who I always used to befriend and give him a little pat, and stuff like that. But I wondered why he actually moved his vehicle from one location to another. And then asking questions, I noticed that he was actually renting some land and he was getting some bullocks himself and so forth. And I also noticed, in actual fact, my feed for the cows wasn't lasting as long as it should have been. And so, in actual fact, that could only mean that I was being shortchanged by the supplier, or that I had a leakage in my business. And literally, what I did find out, in actual fact, by checking his van and doing a check of his van, he was taking bags of food.
Wow.
From my business, all right, to support his business, and he probably thought to himself, well, I've worked for myself. I'm a loyal employee. I've worked really well. I deserve this extra.
That's how a lot of things go, isn't it? It's like you sort of kid yourself with that mindset. It's like, well, you know what? I deserve a little bit of this. I deserve a bit of that.
And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so consequently, I had to deal with them. And as soon as I found them, I showed them the evidence, and I let him go on the spot,
So, just like, what lessons have you learned from that you've been able to implement in future businesses since the farm? So, like, what sort of process was it like? Sort of like looking at your making sure all your inventory is right and stuff like that.
Well, be honest, James, this has been happening in every business I've been into from the age of 25. And what it is it's resulted in people having been terminated because of it.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you steal from a business, and I'm quite clear on this, if you steal from a business, not only do you lose the trust of the business owner, but also you're putting other people's jobs at risk, because if we're not making enough profit and so forth, we've got less money to pay people, which means that we might have to cut someone from the workforce or not give people the pay rise that we want to. So I'm quite strict on it, that if someone is taking from the business, all right, he's taking from his colleagues as well, or her colleagues, and so forth. So you have to be really, really strict on that. So the thing is, and it's a good question, what you need to do is actually really understand the process of the business. So if you've got goods coming in, you must have someone who you can trust to actually check that in actual fact the supplier is delivering 100% what
you've ordered or
you've
what you,
ordered.
yeah,
And if it's wrong, you need to notify that supplier within 3 working days that you've got a problem and so forth. Because if you don't, quite frankly, they're going to say, well, you're taking your time. We did deliver that,
yeah,
and you've signed for it. So I used to get my goods in with people to sign. They used to check what they could, but bear in mind, a lot of this stuff is in boxes. All right,
yeah.
you're not going to open every box and
No,
count every item
every
in there.
grain of rice.
But what it is, you're signing for, let's say, 10 boxes.
Yeah,
But I always used to get them to sign 10 boxes unchecked. And then they've got 3 days to open that box to check that in actual fact we got the right quantity. And if it's not the right quantity, we'd report it back to the supplier. So that's number one, to make sure that what's been delivered is the right quantity, it's in good nick, it's not damaged, and also that you've been invoiced correctly and it's at the right price. And when people, certainly in the trades, and I feel sorry for them because they are excellent technicians, whether you're an electrician, you're a plumber, or a roofer, a plasterer, whatever. They're great at their job and so forth. But they need some time with their family. And so, and at the end of the day, they've got to do their accounts and they've got to look at their invoices and so forth. And quite often they may just say, oh, yeah, I think that's right. And so, those prices are right. But they need to make sure that in actual fact they are being invoiced properly, because it's a lot easier for a wholesaler to overcharge a busy trader than it is for a trader to spot the mistake.
yeah. Because the problem is that their work is all based on trust. Because it's generally, I've got to get the work done, then I get paid. And if you're getting shortchanged at the end of it, well, the customer's still got all the work done.
Yeah.
It's quite a big problem with that one, isn't it? It's like,
well, it is, and I would recommend any business, right, to focus on checking their invoices. When I was in Nottingham, I took over that depot, and it was a £10 million depot, 75 staff, putting a load of processes. But what I did was I employed a guy out of school to just check my manufacturer and supplier invoices. Guess how much do you think he saved me on overpriced invoice from suppliers in a year?
I couldn't guess it.
£250,000.
Really?
On a 10 million sales turnover, he
Jeez.
saved me £250,000 on suppliers overpricing me.
Wow.
And do you know what? And he paid a lot of wages.
Yeah.
By that saving, and the beauty of that is I made a record profit. And I was well pleased with it. And the manager.
So no extra work really, was it? It was actually saying, well, actually, it's what I'm owed.
Yeah, exactly. And getting the debit notes out to the manufacturers, and not paying an invoice that's been overpriced.
Yeah.
Until it's been rectified. And, that is so important. And literally, I felt I was really on top of my finances, and the operations. So much so, the manager was over the moon, because in actual fact, it was operating really, really well. And that is such a simple thing to do, that if you don't have time to check your invoices, get someone else to do it, even if it's a virtual assistant, or, pay someone to check your invoice, because
it's worth it.
You will more than cover the salary of that person, all right, by checking those invoices.
So far we've got obviously like the flow of the operation needs to be understood, checking all the cash flow on the invoices and exchanges and stuff like that. Is there anything else at all that people can look out for?
Just check on how your people are operating, their job roles, and making sure that you understand how every job operates, and that in actual fact that there's no leakages happening in the business.
Yeah.
And there's plenty we could talk about on the sort of leakages that I've just mentioned a couple there.
No, but, all right, they're really good points actually, because I think people don't really always understand like what they need to be looking out for. But I thought how you said it about the farmhand was really, really good. Sort of like looking at their like behavior and characteristics. And I suppose that's what you're saying, when each person's job, you actually start recognizing patterns and stuff like that. And patterns start changing, question marks are appearing. Yeah,
if you put in a process and somehow someone's changing it, or they're doing something different, or they're, like in this case on the farm, he parked in a different place, which is closer to where he could take the food that he was then taking out off the farm to pass on to his own animals. But it's actually understanding that story that in actual fact, oh, right, he's actually harrying some land. So asking the question, what are you doing with that land? Oh, you got some bullocks to put on that land. Okay, so how are you feeding them? You know, and then obviously he didn't give me the answer, I'm nicking your food.
Wasn't that stupid?
No, but the point is me then having the evidence to sort of say, well, in actual fact, I know how when I get 10 tons of concentrate food to my farm at the time, I know how far that went.
Sure.
Because I knew how much, because each cow gets a certain amount, some get more food than others, depending on what level they are at the milk production, giving milk and so forth. And so if a cow's giving less milk and it's coming to the time where you're going to dry them off in order for them to calve, they're sort of getting less food and so forth, because they don't need that extra food to produce the butter fat and the extra milk quantity and going on like that. So it's actually looking out in business for things that don't quite look right and having the courage to investigate it, not just ignoring it and going on. If something doesn't look right in your business, you need to stop, have a look at it, ask a question. And investigations are really, really, really important. So on an HR side of it, if you're not sure about someone's performance, what you need to do is just invite them in for an investigation meeting. It's not a disciplinary. Well, it could lead to a disciplinary, but the point is you're asking to come in to have an investigation to actually understand. I understand there's a problem. Well, there's something I don't understand happening here. Can you explain further? And could you explain your involvement on it? And if they can explain it and you can see in actual fact, oh, well, that's something we need to change because, we're doing the wrong thing here.
Yeah.
Then it's a win-win for both sides.
I suppose that's where HR also comes back into play, really.
It does.
I imagine that, because that a lot of your business, but when you operate with, as a HR consultant, it's a lot of this sort of stuff, is it?
It is. There's quite a lot of investigation.
Yeah.
But it takes courage for the business owner to stop and say, I need to investigate that. Because they're all busy, all right? And no one wants to think something's wrong's happening in their business. It's natural. But if something is different happening in your business, you need to stop, have a look at it, and investigate it and get your facts right. Now, if bad play is happening from the employee side of it, you might want to take it further and take it into a disciplinary. If not, if it's just something that needs to be reorganized and improved upon, then you've actually got the member of staff, the employee, to work with to improve the process and so forth. So it is a win-win when both sides are working together and say, look, I understand, okay, well, we need to change this because it's not helping productivity, it's not helping cash flow, it's not giving the best customer service, and it's obviously wasting too much time.
But it takes a lot for business owners to get to that stage, though, doesn't it? Because
it takes a bit of courage.
When you start a business, you're working in the business.
Yes.
But one thing I always hear you say is that business owners need to work on the business and employ someone to work in it. Is that right?
And it's really hard because when we start off in business, like I did on the farm, as I mentioned to you, I had to become the technician.
Yeah.
Because no one else on the farm knew it.
You're working in it.
So I'm working in it, all right? But in order to make decisions like an exit strategy, I had to step outside the business and look at how the business operated.
Objectively, sort of.
Yeah, of course. So it's not easy when you are a technician in the business to pull back. And sometimes it's quite a good idea to actually ask another person to come in and just have a look at it, how it operates and see how it could be improved and give you some suggestions.
Because when you're working in the business, you haven't really got time to sort of be wondering, oh, is that guy shortchanging me a couple of quid here or there? Because you're focused on everything else, and also if you have employees, them as well. So,
well, a business owner when they're working in the business, they are distracted because they're giving the customer service to the client generally. Yeah. Okay, the person working on the business is actually looking at other people giving the service to the client, so they can be more critical. So, yes, the ideal is to work on the business and in the business, so you can actually monitor and manage and show leadership to everybody else.
Cool. Well, I think that's all we have time for today on the Business Success Podcast. I've been James Keeble.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for watching.